Today is February 7th, the legislative committee meeting. Is there any issues or to the minutes from December? Because we did not meet, or due to the holidays. All right, the first item on the agenda is
I'd like to ask if you could add one item. It was scheduled for the last economic development committee meeting, which was canceled. It's a simple one. It's the purchase of a property from the Marion County Land Bank, where they're only charging us the amount of the taxes due, which is $71.65.
Okay. First item on the agenda is duly noted in this ad. First item on the agenda is appointment to the Personnel and Finance Committee, Ms. Felicia Smith. Ms. Smith, did you have any comments or questions or anything that you wanted to as to why you want to serve on that particular committee?
I love serving, and I need something to do in my spare time since I have.
Can you speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just love serving my community, and I have some spare time. And I do have background in finance. I'm dealing with money, lots of money. And the cemetery committee, I want to serve on that committee and see some changes come about with the cemetery. And like I said, I love my city and I just like to serve.
So I have a question. I know that particular committee meets at what, 10 a.m.? Is it 1?
They meet at 1 p.m.
At 1 o'clock, would you be able to attend those meetings? Because I know I was doing.
Yes, I'll be able to work around that with my work schedule, so no problem. Yeah, that's why I picked it, yes, so no problem.
I don't have any questions, but love when citizens want to serve and help the community, so thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much.
The next appointment is to the Brownfield redevelopment, Mr. Tim Warren. He was currently serving there as a citizen rep. He will be switched over to commission rep for the Brownfield authority.
So, I've done the Brownfield for the last couple of years. I serve as the treasurer. I enjoy what I do. I think we're doing great work. And I'm excited to be reappointed.
Thank you.
Next appointment on the agenda is appointment to the planning commission, former Commissioner Mary Alice Adams.
Do I have to walk?
You don't have to.
Okay, good. Hello, everybody.
I can read here why you want to serve, and you can. For everybody that is signing up to serve, there's not a whole line of them. Thank you for serving in that role.
Thank
It's a
you,
pleasure to have you
thank you.
there.
Do I need to say something?
If you want to.
Well, no, the only thing that I would like to say is that for all listening ears and eyes that may be listening is, it's all just a part of the continued work that needs to continue. We can't ask others to come and be a part of and sit on the committees and help to move this city forward without acting on it.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Next, reappointment to the planning commission will be Mr. Reed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm currently the chairman of the Harvest Planning Commission, and we've accomplished quite a bit in the last several years. And I feel like now is the time to continue with the work that we've already started. And one of those things that I would like to continue to work on is the master plan. I prefer to call it the community strategy plan, because the plan was put together by the citizens, those people who attended the meetings, the surveys that were taken and so forth. So this is the direction that they would like to see us go in. Basically, that's why I wanted to continue on, is to complete the work that I've started. And while I'm here, if you like, I would like to give an update on the Planning Commission and what we've done so far. Most of you are already familiar with Project T. That's the old Mercy Hospital site where we're going to have housing there, affordable, and some market rate. We had the corner at Wall Street. I'm sure most of you know what that's about. We're going to have a grocery store and approximately 54 apartments. The Emma Hull Flats, which many think was a Whirlpool product, but it was actually workforce housing for some of the people who lived in the community. It's a good thing to be able to walk across the street to work and not have to drive a car commute. So that's one of the things that we would be looking at citywide. We also had several marijuana provisioning centers and growth facilities that we approved. So those were some of the projects that we highlighted. There's a lot of construction going on, infrastructure work, but the Planning Commission was not directly involved in that, although we were looking for certain things that all master plans should have in them, rather. The safety of the citizens, public safety, fire safety, things like that, providing necessary infrastructure for water, sewers, and so forth. So we do review that, and that's some of the other work that we do. Now, an update to where we're at, we most recently approved the master plan. In that plan, there's a lot of information that I would have to go into a lot of details on. One of the main things that this particular plan contains that we didn't see much of in some of the other plans, or the plan that we had previously, was housing. Housing is going to be a very big deal. So I'm going to ask the city clerk if she could play a 5-minute clip for us to explain one of the issues when we start talking about housing. We call that the missing middle. The one on the bottom.
Could you speak up and say that again?
Can you talk into the mic a little bit, Mr. Reed, please?
One of the issues that's going to come up is what we call the missing middle, and that's a housing program. I got this little YouTube video for you because it'll explain it in much more detail.
Can we put the lights down? Lights.
Show you some photographic examples of different cities and smaller towns from all across the country that has a range of these missing middle housing types. So what is missing middle housing? This is a diagram that we created several years ago that has really promoted the concept and enabled the concept to really catch on very rapidly in communities across the country. On your left-hand side of this diagram in white are the single-family detached housing types. On your right-hand side of this diagram are the larger 4 or 5 story plus story mixed-use buildings or larger apartment buildings. And we've done a really great job of planning and zoning for single family, and we know how to build a lot of those. And on the other side, in the past 5 to 10 years in particular, we really thought about how to plan for and figure out how to build those larger urban projects. And it's all of these housing types in between that we call the missing middle. It's duplexes, it's fourplexes, it's bungalow courts, it's live-work buildings. And what's important about the concept of the missing middle is even though these buildings have multiple units in the building, they never get larger than the scale of a house. It's a really, really important concept. If you take one concept away from this webinar, that is probably the most important one. And so why do we call them missing? Right? We call them missing because there are a lot of barriers currently in place for missing middle housing to get built. We really haven't seen a lot of these housing types built in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And the majority of them, the existing examples, were built in pre-1940s neighborhoods. And so they're missing because there's a lot of zoning barriers in place that I just mentioned earlier. They're missing because it's really hard, or it's much harder to finance a building with more than 4 units in it. It's missing because, our industries, the building industries and the development industries are not set up to focus on this type of housing. So some of it's being built, but it's not being built sort of at a production scale. It's being built by smaller, sort of local, more boutique scale builders. And so there's very little of it being built. And so, right, you see examples of these missing middle types in places in big cities like Denver, Colorado, right? You see this great collection of beautiful historic missing middle types. You see them in medium-sized cities. This is Santa Barbara, California, right? It's got some of the most vast collection of these missing middle types of any community that I've been in, worked in across the country. It's a courtyard apartment, bungalow court on the upper right-hand side, a multiplex small, another example of a courtyard apartment in the lower left-hand side. So, and then smaller communities, right? Even places like Norman, Oklahoma have really great examples of these missing middle housing types. And they're typically sprinkled throughout the downtown adjacent neighborhoods. Right, and it's geographically diverse, the locations and the places these exist, even in places like Omaha, Nebraska, in the Midwest, right? Great collection of missing middle housing types. In places like Detroit, Michigan, we're seeing that missing middle housing types, there's a really, really great collection and really beautifully sort of historic examples in Detroit. They're playing a really critical role in places like Detroit in the revitalization of the downtown adjacent and the urban neighborhoods. And so I'd like to sort of conclude that sort of group of examples using New Orleans. New Orleans, Louisiana, right, has a very similar, what we call the pellet, or the collection of missing middle housing types. But what's great about these missing middle types is even though that group or that pellet is similar in different cities or towns, is they have adapted and adopted sort of differences based on local culture and local climate. And New Orleans kind of reinforces that to the most to the largest extent. In the upper right-hand side, your upper right-hand side, there's this side-by-side duplex, which in the New Orleans example is actually 2 shotgun houses that are put together. And if you don't know what a shotgun house is, it's actually sort of a very narrow, very deep unit type that's very typical in the southeast and hot, humid areas where you can actually open the front door, and you can open the back door, and it allows for really great cross ventilation and naturally cool the buildings. The other thing that's really neat about the duplex as it's adapted to New Orleans is it has a really deep overhang so that it prevents rain from coming in the windows. You can still have the windows down for that cross ventilation, and it also passively shades the house so that it keeps it cooler in the hot summer weather. And so just like to show that as an example of ways that the missing middle types are similar but have adapted different communities across the country. So that concludes this introduction and definition of missing middle chapter. And so in the next chapter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through a series of photographic examples of a full range of missing middle types and explain to you the characteristics of those types.
Thank you, Tiffany. Can we get the lights, please?
Turn the light on, Mr. Dunn.
They cut them off over here, I guess. Yeah. It's not working over here.
Oh, somebody else turned them off.
Okay, missing middle housing. Majority of the housing in Benton Harbor is single-family residences. So if you want to increase the density, apartment buildings would be one of the better ways to go. I prefer to call them multifamily homes because most of them are going to be 4 units or less, and they can be built on the existing city lots without too much of an issue. One of the things that I wanted to address is that Benton Harbor uses its residences as a tax base, part of our income. And if you want to increase your tax base, you either raise the rent of people who live here, not raise the rent, raise their property taxes. And landlords will, of course, raise rents to cover that increase in the taxes from their tenants. So one of the ways to do this is to attract more people to the city, but you don't want to displace the people who are already here. So using or building apartment buildings in what used to be commercial areas or downtown areas, as we like to call them sometimes, is another way to do that without disturbing the existing houses that are already there. Now, if you increase property taxes, you can actually price people right out of the community. So raising taxes or using residents as the residential properties for your tax base is not a good idea in the long run. So you have to look for other sources of income. Income taxes, people have to have jobs in order to pay income tax. So where would you generate the new jobs? And most of the time, we look for our commercial areas to do that in. A lot of the examples that they didn't show would be where you have businesses on the first floor, and on your upper floors, you have residences. This way, people who are able to afford the acquisition costs can acquire or build apartment buildings and have their tenants pay the bills. And that is one way that a lot of real estate investors get started. And this is another way to build wealth for people who understand how to invest in real estate. We cannot depend on grants. Grants are not guaranteed. Grants will fund your larger projects, and we've seen that being done by some of the grants that we've recently received. But since it's not guaranteed, that's not always the best way to go. What we're looking at is what's the best way to utilize home ownership and at the same time increase density without displacement. And these are the things, and one of the reasons I said housing is big. We're gonna have to really take a good look at this. I would recommend that we go slow, incrementally, building as we go. If necessary, doing some of the master plan as to what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated. And by doing it this way, without rushing into it, you're able to better control your forward motions. Looking at land banks, land trusts, other ways you could preserve land for the purpose of controlling costs. But some of the issues we're looking at is the high price of lumber, the high price of skilled workers to build stick-built houses. We're also looking at containers. We're also looking at factory-built housing. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at before we start pointing fingers or doing things that won't be productive. So I would recommend that we do some researching on this first before we get too far down the road as to how we should proceed. So at this time, that's basically where the Planning Commission comes in. The recently approved master plan, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understands this was a plan of the people. The people made this plan. Nobody came in from the outside just forcing us to do something we don't want to do. So the meetings we attended, the stickers on the boards, that's where all of the ideas came from. The consultant compiled all of this data together, and we ended up with the plan that we now have. But the plan won't mean much more than writing on a sheet of paper if you don't have any way to control or regulate how you use the master plan. So that's why we need to update our zoning ordinance. That becomes the teeth or your enforcement document. That's going to tell us where in the city things are permitted. If it's permitted, you basically only need to register with the zoning department. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do. With larger projects, we would recommend that you pre-plan with us to discuss what it is you want to do, and we can kind of get you on the right track to get the project started and moving ahead successfully. One of the things that we do is have special permits, things that are not permitted. If you still think that this is something you want to do, you can come and request a special use permit. Those are things that we use from time to time. The zoning ordinance can be obtained by anyone from the city's webpage. I recommend that we do that because I would like to meet with the commissioners of the wards to discuss with them how best the zoning could be rewritten, if that's what it requires, to take advantage of whatever opportunities that we see that exist in the community. But it has to be a community endeavor. This can't be something that one part of the city does and everybody's gonna have to comply with it. One size shoe does not fit all feet. Everybody in the city is not broke or poor. We have to cater to people from where they're at. Some people are below poverty levels, some are at it, and some are above it. So when you start talking about housing and what we're going to do to improve, we have to kind of look at what works for the majority of the people. There's several ways we've looked at this in the past. The glass half empty, for example. Looking at it from the standpoint that we're broke, we don't have what we need. There's not much we can do about it. The other way to look at it, and that's the approach I like, is the access-based community development. Everybody has something to contribute. If you looked at Ben Harbor as being a giant jigsaw puzzle, when you buy it, the picture on the box is what the puzzle looks like. When you open the box, there's nothing but pieces. How do all the pieces fit together? And in asset-based community development, what you're looking at is people have talents, skills, and abilities. So if we start from that point, everybody has a starting point, but they're not all the same. You're not trying to make a law that's gonna solve all the problems, but you can help and assist people to get started based upon where they're at. And this is the approach that I would recommend that we use. There's many other assets, things that we can look at that the city already has, and we can build on that. And I would recommend that we do surveys to determine what are the skills and talents that we already have, and how can we help those with skills rebuild the city. We need to rebuild the city ourselves. That way we know where the city's going. We know how to understand the complexities of governance. And working with the city commission, I think that would be a better thing to do than to have the city commissioners tell us, we got your back, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. And we have a tendency to generate what I call learned helplessness when you do that. If you put a child on and breastfeed him long enough, you're going to end up with a breastfed adult. We have a lot of people with skills and talents that they haven't utilized. They don't realize that. What do you need to fill your cup the rest of the way? But we need to get the city off its feet and up and running. So these are the things that we need to do. And we're going to have to all come together and work together to accomplish these goals. Nobody has that single piece of the puzzle where that they can jump and run with it, expecting that one shoe to fit all the feet. So I'm simply saying that the goal, as I see it, is to teach us once again how to work together.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'll have people ask questions at the end. We have quite a few presentations today.
Okay.
And then at the end, people want to ask questions in regards to the information that you talked about, which is great.
Thank you.
We'll do that. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is the parking ordinance. Who's taking those?
Come along.
Have an agenda. Which one do I go first? So, well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. See you guys. Did we leave? Oh, only. I'm very interested in that discussion. So, As you know, we've been kind of bringing some things before legislative and some other committees as far as getting some updates to our ordinances. Part for tonight, this is really discussion kind of only, but we have like multiple facets that are kind of unrelated, but it's still parking. One of the things in speaking to the city attorney is, and to the clerk, she actually had a good suggestion, was to create our, to create our own parking ordinance. Right now, it's nestled in the chapter 41, and you gotta dig through and find it, and it's not very complete. I'll give you an example, because one of the things I have on here is clarity on parking on lawn. When I started in police work here, we were told that you can't park on lawns. We would even cite people for it, but I can't find anywhere in our ordinance that exists.
Told y'all.
That's one of those things that's just word of mouth, and it just became, urban legend became true. So we want to get to the point where we address that. Also, from a public safety perspective, we've been talking years about the odd even parking, which we are recommending for, we have some very narrow streets, Pearl, Superior, those streets that are very difficult in the wintertime to A, get plow trucks down, B, get emergency service vehicles down, ambulances, our apparatus for fire. And there is, in the ordinance, it speaks to odd even parking, but it's very light, very nebulous. And it also only speaks to that on emergency snow routes, which the emergency snow route, in order to enforce that or anything, has to take a declaration, I think either from the mayor to the manager of a snow emergency, et cetera, versus I believe if we can, and I have one here, 2025, we're working, obviously it's not gonna be done now, but for the future where we can get whatever that ordinance is gonna be in place and have the public education so people understand, you know, if it's an even day, you're on this side, we can plow. It's an odd day, you're on this side, we can plow, as well as get down in cases of emergency. So the city attorney is working on a comprehensive ordinance proposal. So those are a couple things that I have, again, very, very shortly. In addition to that, which kind of leads into, I'll segue into Deputy Director Clark, is as we are talking about adding parking meters downtown, I'll say downstairs, downtown, to kind of gain some funds from the very growing and bustling downtown Menard, but we all know that. We have to adjust our fees. I mean, our parking fees like $5. Granted, we're not trying to kill people, but we are not in kind of the same range as other municipalities. So again, just right now for the state of getting out there for discussion, what the city attorney's plan is we discuss it here. I think we're gonna bring a couple presentations next week to public safety in relation to the parking downtown. And then we're hoping by February, the second meeting in February or the first meeting in April to have that legislation to you all, for you guys to be 9-0. Come on, guys. It's been a long day. Oh, trust me, I know. There's a guy that walked into a bar.
Come on.
There we go. So that's where we are for that. And I will, I guess, entertain any questions on that. Then after that, Madam Chair, it would be a pleasure. We can transition into Deputy Director Clark.
Let's,
I mean, for you all.
oh, yeah, let's,
It's just a quick question, or basically just a statement. I'm glad to see this coming forth and moving, but I'd like for him to also address the handicap part
Okay.
All right, go ahead, then.
on those
Save
streets
questions to
that,
the end, and we'll ask any questions at the end, just so we can go through those presentations. Go ahead, sir.
So the ordinance that we're gonna ask to bring is actually gonna be a change, and it's not going to set the parking fee by ordinance, but instead it will set a schedule of fees that the commission would set every year, much like many of the other communities do. So every year, come April, May, you guys will see a new schedule of fees that would have the adjustments. Currently, right now, the parking violation is $5 across the board. So obviously it needs to be adjusted. And then especially when we start to focus on putting the downtown parking in, we need to have that set in place. So that's where that's gonna be coming from. So there'll be an ordinance coming for the downtown parking district and then one coming for the schedule of fees.
So for, even at the beach, the parking is $5 for a violation?
Unfortunately, yes.
Coach.
In other cities, it's anywhere between 25 and 40.
So I started in residential
Okay.
downtown, yeah.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I can throw in with that, so in addition to that, we're going to be asking as we move forward to, I guess, probably kind of, we've been working on the updated fees for the building department and co-compliance. So I think we can put these together since it's kind of coming from us. So I think we're ready to go from our side as far as the fees for permits and whatnot, and some other proposals as far as the planning commission fees. So I'm assuming that will also have to or should go through personnel and finance. So would it be your pleasure for us to do that this month, or at least have a discussion, or how should it be handled?
I think it should go to the next committee for either discussion, so we can keep it moving, because summer's coming.
Okay.
People are coming.
Absolutely. Okay.
Talking to your mic.
Oh, people are all saying, keep it moving, because people are coming, and we need to address this before the summer begins. Okay, next item, then we'll entertain any questions.
Okay. The next item, is it short term?
I thought it was, yeah, short-term rentals.
All right, so Mr. Reed, I'm glad you're here because this is an issue that we are dealing with. It's gaining legs, add-ons, road skates. I'm gonna have Deputy Director Casualty come and speak to that. I don't necessarily have necessarily knowledge to speak to that intelligently, but we got to get something in place rather quickly. I don't know how that is. That's why we're here getting guidance from you. And we're definitely interested to hear your take on that. So short-term rentals, from his experience to talk about, they're already here. And we have nothing to govern them. That's not good. I'll turn over to.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Yeah, we know they're already here. We know there's several on Water Street, Territorial and Pipestone, the Sheffield building, the building that the brick house is in, et cetera. So they're here. Pretty much every other city around us is either having the same discussion right now or has already passed a short-term rental ordinance. It's definitely something we need to get control of. We've already had some illegal parties taking place in these properties. We've closed a couple down, but we see them advertised now every weekend where, Airbnb party, in Benton Harbor. So what they're doing is they're renting these places and then they're having a party there and because they're not worried about what's going to happen to the property. Which is also, it's a violation of the Airbnb rules, but still, unless they get caught, we're not, it just creates issues. So, but at this point, we have no idea how many exist. My guess is there's at least 25, but there's probably double that. Any questions from you guys?
We were looking at the fee structures and stuff like that. Have you thought about fees for fines for people who have not registered? So you're saying these properties haven't even been registered. They're on the Airbnb list, but they haven't been registered as rentals or any of those things. So that we're collecting rental fees, inspections are being done. So none of that is happening in these properties.
It's a little of both. Some of them aren't registered at all. Some of them are just registered currently as rentals.
So what, like the short-term rentals, would that include also people who are renting rooms and that kind of thing? Because that is.
Yeah, that's another nightmare we've been dealing with actually this whole past month. Is these, we actually just shut down an illegal boarding house in the past.
Did we condemn one?
Yeah, we condemned one on Broadway last month, or in January. That was, they were forcing a gentleman to live without heat in a porch. They were basically taking his money, forcing him, and then they had an extension cord that was powering, like he had a microwave and some things. And if he did not buy beer for the guy that was the landlord there, he would unplug the power and turn it off for him. So
How were you able to find out about those? Did they somebody call?
the gentleman finally got sick of freezing and came down here and made a complaint. And we went out there the same day and condemned it that same day.
And I'd like to speak to your question, Commissioner. You said, are there currently fees or penalties? No, there aren't, which is part of our proposal I was just talking about that's going to come before you all, hopefully vote those fees in, because right now there are no penalties, and we have people who have been ignoring the registering properties, rent registration for years. Not that we're trying to obviously get rich off that, but there's got to be something that stops them from the behavior, so that will be coming in that package.
Right, I mean, I think, like you said, if it comes under control, I mean, the city should know what's happening in the city and to protect residents, like the fire that just happened. You know, people are doing stuff and people are getting hurt by illegal things, and so, you know, not to, you know, fine people, but to make sure that they come into compliance.
Well, and just to touch on that, we had a fire in December in a home that was once again an illegal boarding house where a gentleman, he was being forced to sleep in a closet, fell out of his closet onto a heating plate, like just a little portable stove, caught himself in the room on fire. There was no working furnace in the home. The landlord, once again, was just taking their money. That one was condemned as well. But there was the roach population in that house was, I mean, everywhere you look, the walls moved. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people being taken advantage of by these, bad, slumlords, bad landlords, whatever you want to call them. They're just taking their money and treating them like they're nothing.
So I think in that only one, we end up, because now we would go over basic code compliance into public safety, and we've had to contact adult services to get people services in custody or whatever, not custody, but under protection from these conditions. So since he's taken over, he's really on a roll. Not some people happy, but these are some really horrible conditions that, I know we are in these houses as cops and firefighters, but we can't have our people living like this.
No, and just another one, it's not a rooming house, but we had another one this past week where the children were removed by CPS because they had roaches in their ears. And we condemned that house as well in Milton. So that we have to get control of this.
So I had a question going back to the short-term rental. For Airbnb, are you saying that the people who want to rent their home, just says they're primary residents, but we have a golf event and they can make some extra money, are they supposed to register that also, even if it's just for a golf event or for a summer weekend or?
Right. There's nothing right now that says that other than our rental registration, which requires an inspection, requires smoke detectors, certain conditions, but there's nothing that says specific to Airbnb short-term, over a weekend type thing.
It should be, that's what we need to get for.
Most communities I've lived in short term. Most communities I've been in, this short-term rentals issue is also a zoning matter. Because if you begin to stabilize neighborhoods and get homes that are of value in them, if suddenly right in the middle, somebody is renting places out, and instead of 1 or 2 cars being parked there, there's 30, and noise all night and whatnot, before long, people are moving out, you affect the value of those homes. So I think we really need to look at that as a zoning problem also.
Meaning certain areas
Yes.
are deemed places for Airbnbs, not
Exactly.
Buffalo, I think they have that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Little, because that makes a lot of sense. No sense in fixing a problem and then creating another one on top of it. But just to say something about the state of Michigan, as far as business registration is concerned, because I wonder why I hadn't heard from the fire marshal, but that's because I didn't register my business. That's because I'm not operating anymore, but I intend to save my name. And in doing so, I have to pay the state for my business license. But the state of Michigan needs to actually let these communities know of registered businesses within their state. So that way, we know, we have the information enough because when I register with the state, I usually have to register with the city as well. And then there's an investigation, an inspection that comes along with it.
Well, the other piece to that too is income tax. So when they register, then they need to be paying income tax. And then on these short-term rentals, every time they would rent, there would be income tax received. Also, most communities charge it's like an in tax. So if you rent a hotel and you go to St. Joe and you go to the Inn at Harbor Shores, there's an in tax on there. There would be an in tax for every night of rental.
I would just add to that, I think it's great to move forward with just a rental policy, particularly because this community is 70% rentals, and there are a lot of people taking advantage of the people who live here. But I just want to know, as you guys do the ordinance and create structure, also create the infrastructure to handle it. One of the things I used to live in Baltimore, and now I'm renting my place there. And so they changed it to where everything is electronic, where you can register as a long-term rental, a short-term rental, things like that. Because I know, I live in a multi-unit here, and I've tried to do that where it's gotten inspected, and I'm like, okay, well, where's the next step? And they're like, let me get back to you, and crickets, you know what I mean? So I'm a missed opportunity for revenue for the city, but compliance for me, right? And so just making sure that when it's all rolled out, solutions are rolled out so that code enforcement is also at capacity to handle it. And one of the things that happens in Baltimore City is that there is two different inspections that's required if you're going to rent your house. You have to have a lead inspection, and you also have to have just a general rental inspection. And regular people are able to get certified to complete these inspections. So if I want to start an inspection business, the city could work, or the person would pay me to facilitate the inspection, and then I would have to fill out a form that the city has in order to verify that it's up to par. And so it's a license. I think in Baltimore it's a license that you can receive through the state. I don't know if Michigan has that same license, but it could be a way to increase the city's capacity to actually facilitate some of these inspections.
Is there any other questions around or comments on this particular issue that they can answer?
Good evening. I don't know if this isn't relevant, me coming in late, but it does have something. A resident this is the third time, and Mr. Mitchell knows, not about this particular one. A 1 room gas bill, electric bill, 600 and something. It's 1 room, no kitchenette, nothing else. Nothing in there but the little hotel refrigerator and a microwave. It's all electricity in there, besides a couple of lights. And for 3 months in a row, I got, she sent me a text of her last bill, 600 something. The month before, 500 something. So my question would be, what could a resident do in that case?
Living in a room, that's what we were talking about. Is it somebody living in a room in a house?
Yeah, it's a rooming house. It's on the corner of Britton and Colfax.
Yeah, you can just put it into the house.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it does.
I'll check it out. I'll put that, because if it is a rooming house, that's not one we have on our list. Because I have all of our rooming houses. We'll be there tomorrow.
The apartment. Well, I don't know if they're rooming house or apartments, but I know whoever in there, they got 1 room.
That sounds like a rooming house. to me.
Right.
My sister
Did you get to talk to,
I'll see you afterwards then, give you the address and,
Yeah, send it. You have my number, Jerry. Just send it to me, and we'll be over there tomorrow.
okay.
Commissioner, be mindful of, even ask this person to be talked to again, around the perimeter of their homes, because it's not uncommon for a next door to pirate off a house. See that before in police work, they'll do that. So they'll get a bill, they'll go from maybe $30, $40, just a long time ago, a month to $400 or $500. Family next door is tapped in. So these are the type of things that we do.
They may be watching now.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, we worked on this problem back years ago, and one of the things that we came up with was, because there was already a rental registration ordinance. At that time, we had a very strong landlords association here in the city. And they came to us and indicated that, they understood and would comply with the rental registration ordinance, but there needed to be something also to address tenant behavior in that. We revised the ordinance to do both. And part of it was that each rental unit had to be registered each year. But they also had to have an occupancy permit, which meant an inspection. Each time the utilities were to change names or the new people went in, they had to have an inspection and get an occupancy permit. And without that occupancy permit, now I don't know if that is the case anymore or not, but back then, we found that we were able to get the cooperation of gas and electric, that they wouldn't turn utilities on if that person didn't have an occupancy permit. And it helped us a lot with those kinds of problems.
So that probably will need to be reestablished, because it's not happening. Because we have rooming houses and all kind of nonsense going on, so it's not happening. But that is a great thing. I think that would help with some of the issues that we work with it.
That's still on the books, it's just enforcing it, which community do stuff. So that's exactly how it is.
So on the books, it's that way, but in reality, that's not what's happening.
There's not a day that goes by where they don't find, today, there's a new business on Main Street that renovated, moved in there. It's just, that's how they do Ben Harbor.
22 pages of fire code violations in this business that's being occupied. We found this.
There's no respect.
No permits were ever pulled.
Yeah.
Won't do that in St. Joe.
Time to take a
So
different direction.
I think there's an opportunity to rebrand Benton Harbor, and I think that's what we're missing.
Yes.
And to educate people through the town halls. I know I was talking, that's how the commission can help to do town halls, to explain all of these things. And so I know she has one coming up, I have one coming up, that it would be great for you guys to come out and talk to our residents about some of the changes that's happening, and so that we blanket the community with all of this new information. Because as Ms. Hines was just talking about, we can do these changes, but we still have to get buy-in from our residents and help them understand what's happening, and how these changes will affect with the odd and even streets, all of these things. I think would be great to help rebrand, who Benton Harbor is.
What typically happens to the people, like, that you guys have to, like, you condemn their building, or what type of resources? Because I can imagine this is gonna be more frequent as things step up, so I'm just trying to figure out how we can anticipate needs and things like that.
We have an amazing relationship with the American Red Cross, and they have put every single one of these people up. So every single person that has been displaced has found short-term housing, and then in the end has had help finding long-term housing.
I was going to ask, is that what happened to the ones that were there outside of the old Harold Palladium, because it's clean? And I'm like, somebody got them out of the cold. But that's zoning. As it relates to zoning, it was a pleasure to serve as economic development co-chair as well as legislative committee chair, because they kind of like corresponded with one another. And I hear a lot of things, especially from Mr. Reed, that I worked on. And he was saying that we need to take our time. Okay, well, I was 8 years in, taking care of and researching a lot of the things that I've heard him mention. And we're at a time now to where we need to be trying to build. We know where the Snaggletooth housing is, but I guess we need to know ownership and all that other stuff. But when it relates to zoning, can we also find out how we can utilize eminent domain for those that have come into our community and purchased properties that are just sitting and what have you, that live across, somewhere else? I mean, they should be allowed a certain amount of time, and if you're not going to do anything with it, I mean, it is what it is.
Something in place. I'm gonna go to you, then Mr. Duncan had a question.
Oh, Mr. Duncan go first.
Go ahead, Mr. Duncan.
No, I'm gonna let you go first because I might wanna follow up on what you said.
Okay, all right. So, you know what, I got 1, 2, 3 things. So I'm gonna backtrack. That's it. I didn't know what overwhelm was today, but one of the other things we'll be bringing to the legislative committee is we don't have anything that mandates people register vacant and unused properties. Not lots, properties. The Flying Pig, we can go on and on. They're just sitting there. So, and to your point, we're going to propose, again, moving forward, in that ordinance that they must register, there must be a fee, and we'll only give them so much time to bring that into some type of use or compliance. Because people just, as you know, they buy properties very cheap, rent them out, slumlord them, walk away. Either if they don't catch fire, they walk away from them, or they catch fire and they walk away from them. So that's something that's on the books. To your point, Ms. Hines, is, you know, what you said, I just dealt with and transferred a call to him and said the exact same thing. I'm trying to comply. I'm trying to do the right thing. I can't get a call back. We don't follow up. We have a senior man, so we have reorganized co-compliance. He has now that blessing. So we are, in just a short time, we've made some strides, but in that reorganization is to stop those stories, to be able to follow up, to make sure we get rental compliance, getting CFOs issued, and when we find people out of compliance, we have a brand new building official who's an actual building official, 20 plus years of experience that came here. He's already making a great impact to make sure, and not just, and I can go on and on, with environmental design. We can't, you know, to Commissioner Kennard's, her passion of cleaning up neighborhoods, that's a part of crime control. If you have a beautified neighborhood and you take pride in it, it should be theoretically less crime there. So we realize we've had problems that we're trying to clean up. So that's what we've done, are doing. And there's some things that we don't know, we're just hose draggers and cops, so we're asking questions. But as we intuitively look at the whole framework of the macrocosm of the issue of the city and where we're going, the issue arose, coming to you now, Mr. Reed, of zoning. We know, or we suspect, that the things that we need to have happen and what we want to do has to intuitively be part of the zoning. We had a meeting, we tried to include you, but it kind of came around kind of quickly. We met with Mr. Little and Mr. Mitchell about updating our zoning, because it's about 12 years old, right? The current ordinance needs to be updated, how that works. We were advised by them that that is in the works. So ultimately, to top all that off, when you get through getting out the word out, when it comes to the income tax and other things, as we go about with the reconstructed, if you will, co-compliance, we're also giving information as far as the information, because you have to have a very good public information campaign. We're going to put together literature that has kind of everything. Here's what you do if you're going to do any type of construction. You need this, this, and this, and this. If you're going to, it has to have, really, our ordinance calls it a certificate of compliance, then a CFO to be issued, have to have an inspection, and then ultimately income tax. You need to register with 200 East Wall if you have employees, because I think, you know, I think we were happy that we had $2 million in the, I call it sinking fund. I'm a school board member. The sinking fund, that's nothing, because we're only collected about 10%. So, and also we have these landlords, for them to also have income tax. There's going to be a bunch of information that goes out. And then in the areas that, you know, I don't think short-term rentals are addressed in the zoning ordinance. I don't know. I doubt they are. I doubt we have these one-room rentals addressed in that. So it's a whole big picture. It will take time, but we're saying it can't take a lot of time. I hope I touched. No, you're done.
No.
Mr. Duncan had a question.
No,
Yes, sir.
ladies first, go ahead.
Just a quick question, because this is something that we've been dealing with for years, and it's still happening. We are aware, and I guess what we need to know is what it looks like, or what it should look like. And it's not a rooming house, but we have children that goes to school, that for some reason, they're at somebody else's house on their couch or somewhere, asleep. And if we could put together the right type of programming for those children to stay in school and focus, some type of I wouldn't call it a boarding house because it would have some structure to it. Just think on it, what it should
Well,
look
what I'm
like.
saying is those students do have a name, and we have a large number of those in our.
I know.
It's called McKinney.
I know, we've been trying to address it for years now.
Homelessness, if you're living with somebody, you're still considered homeless, so there's a large amount of those children.
Yeah.
Families that are in our community.
I mean, even some relatives though, they don't want them there, and it should be able to focus. We're trying to solve problems, so that's one of the biggest ones. Because these are the ones that are going to rebuild this country. We pray.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes. As far as the houses is concerned, it's a good idea. What I liked today was coming to the meeting and seeing a police car stopping somebody on Main Street. I thought that was historical. That's the first time I've seen it, personally. As far as I waited a long time. Give me 1 second. Harbor Towers. Are the people in Harbor Towers displaced? Are they still living in it? Somebody helping them with a place to live? Did I hear any part of that, or am I hallucinating?
I'm sorry, we didn't talk about that today, but we talked about
We're talking about displacement. We're talking. I know what we're talking about, and I think I know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to get an answer as to what is becoming of Harbor Towers and the citizens in Harbor Towers.
I know that they've put together a plan.
So, Mr. Duncan, actually, I'll have Deputy Director give you an update on Harbor Tower. We were there recently, had a communication with them. We're in communication with them constantly, and we go to a monthly meeting. There are some other issues that arose, but I'll let him speak to that, to answer your question.
So we did have a tour with the congressman a couple weeks ago. Congressman promises action. However, let's talk about the real issue that had to be on Sunday. We were there a couple times on Sunday. Both elevators were down. All the stairwells were full of feces and urine again. The floors had feces and urine on them. Our firefighters referred to it as deplorable conditions. Now, one of those reasons is they don't have maintenance there on the weekends. But no maintenance man should ever be forced to clean that up. You know, the issue is they let people in that aren't residents there, and the people that aren't residents destroy the place. The residents, a lot of the residents there are very good people and try to keep their apartments clean. But it's the other folks coming in.
Okay, I got all of that fluff, but I'm asking, what is going to happen to the citizens? What are there? Are they going to have to put out? Are they going to have somewhere to live, or somebody to help them find a place to live? I'm talking about the residents would rent the place.
I'll answer that the best I can because, you know, in the end, I don't have that answer, but I can tell you what happened in St. Joe. When they remodeled the HUD housing in St. Joe, they were put up in either other HUD housing or a hotel during the remodel. I've been told it will be the same. That's hearsay for me. I can't promise that because I'm not in charge of that. It's a HUD issue. But that's what I've been told will happen.
The director came and gave a report to the
That's
commission.
okay.
No, what
I
I'm
got my question answered. The rest is fluff.
No, what I'm saying is.
I want to know, I'm more concerned about the citizens than I am about anything anybody is doing, to tell the truth about it. Because it's been going on, you know how long it actually went on? And you're talking about what's in there now, today, when you find it Sunday, because thank you. You answered my question. Thanks, officer.
I do got one thing I wanted to, Mr. Duncan. One of the things we're proposing is that, and they were favorable, the housing authority, is issue ID cards to actual residents and visitors passes to a certain number to their actual visitors. So security, or we go over there and say, hey, where are you visiting? 302, let's see your pass. Well, if you don't, gotta go. So we're trying to also offer solutions to help too.
So Ben Harbor Housing Commission owns Harbor Towers?
It's actually owned by HUD, and managed by Benton Harbor Housing Commission.
Owned by HUD, but, okay. And we let it go bad like that for all these years. And it's right next door to City Hall. Okay, thanks for hearing me out.
If it was a hotel, it generates money.
The real problem with Harbor Towers began when they changed it from a senior building to allowing in so-called handicapped. And that included people from 18 years old to whatever. And many, they let the people into the building, they do the things that create the problems there and whatnot. It has been discussed that once the building goes through a RAD process, that there'll also be an opportunity to try and get permission from HUD to change it back to being a senior building. I was in one meeting where when that was said, somebody immediately, what are you gonna do with the other people? Benton Harbor needs to stop operating like a third world country. We're not responsible to try to keep up with every individual. We have poor people just like other places have poor people.
No,
And we need to do
No,
what we
no.
can for the poor people that are here. But at the same
No.
time, we also need to concentrate on rebuilding the city.
But since you make that,
Commissioner behind you had a question a day ago. You had your hand raised?
Me?
No, no, okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, no, I was just showing him fire. He asked a question
Oh, okay.
and I didn't want to yell it out and I just.
Go ahead.
so, no, Benton Harbor is not just like another community. Benton Harbor is the worst of it. Look at your own, I hear you guys bringing the statistics up from the census. It's bad. You bring it up when you want to say there's blight and we want to take this money and do something. But then after that, it's okay to say we can't look out for the vulnerable. We can't look out for the poor. Those are the ones that we're supposed to look out for. Oh, let me bring it, if you went to church Sunday, what God say about taking care of the sick and the poor and the children and the widows. So, Benton Harbor is special. And the biggest problem is Benton Harbor's residents. And that's where the money should go. Straighten us out. Put us on the right road. Make it a human infrastructure. You can go down there and fix all that underneath if you want to. But when I hear people say that it's okay, it's not okay for a mother to have a big screen TV. I shouldn't be on welfare with a big screen TV. Some happiness got to come out of life just because you're poor. So when I hear statements, let me know that those people have never been poor. If they did, they came up and did better. Who makes $125,000 a year in Benton Harbor? It's not our people. So when I hear you talk about my people, or how poor they are and how what cultural ethics they have, it's not because we want to live like this. It's forced on us. It's been forced on us for 400, 500 years. Yes, we got to change it. And if the change has to come from us, little at a time, we got to do it though. So, Benton Harbor is poor.
With all due respect, what I was basically saying is city governments provide certain services. The Department of Health and Human Services provides certain services. The state, the county, everybody, they provide different functions and services. And all I'm saying is that we can't get to where we need to get to as a city by looking at infractions that take place and asking the people doing it, is it okay if we cite you for this, or we know you got this problem and so forth, but we need to tell you not to do this. We need to function as a city and ask the agencies that do the other things to do the things they're supposed to do.
Home rule city, that's what we are. Look that up. Thank you.
One last question, if I can get it in. It's about the meters downtown. Is that going through the city to do, to put up the meters down there? Is the city what's gonna actually do the job and collect the monies and all of that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can I get a question?
I had a question about the charging stations, because that came up one other time as well. Are we still looking to put those?
Yes, we are.
The charging stations?
Yes, ma'am.
This is in regards to Mr. Reed's presentation. And I had no idea that you was going to talk about what you talked about. I got a call last night from an old Ben Harbor resident. They want to come and do some development. And I guess she wants to know the first step to take, because she's after pretty large, nice sized development, and she don't want none of Ben Harbor's money, but she did say that she might want to tax, whatever everybody else get, whatever corporations get. So what would be her first step? Cause I just,
Ask her to get in touch with either myself or Mr. Mitchell.
okay,
And get ready to pay those exemptions.
thank you.
Because I think that's one of the issues. A lot of times, people haven't come and asked about exemptions and that kind of thing. And I think it's just a matter of asking, just like all the other businesses. Why would we deny something that's coming into our community to help expand our community? Why would the commission deny that? That wouldn't happen. We just haven't been asked.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
She said she
please
got her
tell them,
own
put the
people on
paperwork
the
together.
developer, she just wants to know who to go to first.
Be glad to.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? This is some great discussion around the improvement in Harbor. I think one of our next steps is getting this information out to the residents, starting with the re-education about some things and through our town hall meetings. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I want to send to all the commissioners, the ordinances that deal with like whose responsibility sidewalks are, the tree lawns and those kinds of things, so that people will, generally, a lot of people have come to believe that that's entirely the city's responsibility. And these things have been on the books since 1945
Where?
in our code of ordinances.
About
which
Chapter
one?
44.
About
Which
the
one?
Chapter 44 is the one that deals, I believe, with vegetation. I think it's 45 that has the other one. But it's right in our code of ordinances.
For the record, what is that about the tree line? You just said some
Something
citizens
changed.
can hear you say.
Basically, what I said about the tree lines is that the city's ordinances say that maintenance of the tree lines from the back of the curb to the property owner's property is a responsibility of the property owner. Cut the grass, to repair the.
The minor thing.
That's right. Cutting the limbs off trees if they need to be or whatever.
Yeah, Commissioner Kennard.
Yes, I'd like to speak on just what he said, this being sidewalks and tree lawn area is the responsibility of the owner of the property. Well, there's the city-owned property that sidewalks are tore up. Because when I leased the garden, we had a whole tree, bush that was blocking the whole sidewalk. And that property belonged to the city because it was leased. And I know. And I had to go in and have someone with a little front loader there to lift that sidewalk up so we can take the root out of the sidewalk there from underneath to clear that walkway, because people will have to go out in the street to get around and get back onto the sidewalk. So the city should first address a lot of the things that they're not doing correctly, even when it comes to the structure of this building that's falling apart and different things. So in order to be, have these findings and have people to abide by them, you got to first be an example of it. So many times we expect so much from the residents and everything, but we, like Commissioner Henry was saying about sometimes the poor, because they've been accustomed, and so many times when you even speak about it, they said, well, it was like this all the time. But we got to remember what the Black Americans has come through. Many of them catch on and get it right and work hard to try to make it right. So I'm not saying that, but so many times people have been abused and made to expect not much. It's almost like they come into our neighborhoods, they break your leg and ask you why you limping. That means take from you and keep you at a minimum. We've even known about Black Wall Street, how those people were prospering, but the city was burned down because of jealousy. So we got to remember there's things that came about, lynching and whatever else, to make people not want to move forward because then they are threatened. So we got to put things into perspective and know we got a lot of work to do in trying to help our people to realize we've got to do better and sort of try to work towards helping them to do better.
That's the real lines you're talking about.
So I have a comment regarding, I've been a homeowner for over 20 years in various cities, and I've always known about the tree line. I think that's kind of common sense. When you mow your lawn, you mow the tree part.
Right.
But the piece that I did not know was the sidewalk piece. I know I learned that in one of our meetings. And I don't think that's common knowledge to know that if your sidewalk is cracked, you're responsible for it. So I definitely think it needs to be some communication to the public, because again, I had no idea. And out of all the cities I've ever lived in, I've never ever repaired a sidewalk. The second piece of it is it should be some kind of something published where if a resident did want to repair their sidewalk, I wouldn't even know the first place to go. So is there certain contractors, or there discounts that are given out? So I think that sidewalk piece is something that I don't call common knowledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I came down here before I became an elected official, when I just started listening, early 2000s, the chamber was this way. And I clearly remember asking the question about this big old tree because it scared me when it was blowing a heavy wind. It was blowing towards my baby's bedroom. And I mean, it was leaning. And I'm like, I need you guys to come and cut this tree down because, I mean, she's already epileptic. Now, if this tree fall on her, I'm coming for you. Meaning the city of Benham, they came and cut the tree down, but questions were asked prior to. Can we get, I know some records were shredded somewhere along the way during emergency management time, but can we get our clerk to possibly look to see, because things change over time with elected officials changing ordinances and little different things, to see if something changed since 1940 something, 1840 something. I mean, seriously, I mean, when I cut my grass, I don't leave the tree line uncut. When I even go one further, I clean up around the neighbors too. But yeah, that was a while ago, but can we get our clerk to check to see if anything had changed in the form of ordinance or something with the tree line responsibility? And I asked Mr. Little to look and see if in fact the Housing Commission was doing their part, because they should be held accountable as well. If the homeowners are, yeah.
And I don't want to take, I know we're far off the agenda, but since the conversation shifted to that, again, it's just like, you know, balancing compliance with what the resources the city has to offer. Because like something as simple as like picking up leaves, like people do that and then they just stay there. Like there's really no process or no notification to residents about how the pickup works, or do we need to call someone, or just things like that, where I just noticed a lot of that just kind of sat there, so.
Thank you, because we need to move on to the next item.
I'd like to ask also, when it comes to the trees that are on the tree lawn, I was always told that the city will take care of that is city-owned property. Your tree lawn is city-owned, that's not actually ours. But because it's in front of the house, it's for us to maintain it. But like I said, the sidewalk wasn't one of the things that you ever knew that was something you had to do. And I do see that we need to do better, even the alleys that they begin to clean up, not to let them, the growth and everything grow up behind that. So there should be a strict ordinance about keeping your area clean. But like I said, us to go out and pay for the sidewalks to be repaired and things like that, I thought that was included in our city income tax, that money that was supposed to repair different things. I thought that was included in that. And also, the main thing is the trees. I want to know whose responsibility is it to take those trees? It costs a lot to take trees down when they're falling, limbs and all.
Again, if it's on the tree line, then by law, it's the property owner's responsibility. If you were in, and I'll show you the reverse of that, if you were in a township, and even some cities do it, and you decide you don't have a sidewalk, and you want one, they come in and they'll tell you, take a form, go down the street, get everybody to sign up for a special assessment, and they'll go and put your sidewalk in. And it becomes a special assessment on your taxes to pay for it, even going in the first time. We do what we can with what we have to try to make it better for everybody. We just did almost $500,000 worth of sidewalks this past year, just to make it better for the community. But at some point, the regular processes have to kick in. Like she said, we spent a small fortune cleaning up and trying to get alleys straight. But if 2 months later, couches and whatnot and everything under the sun is piling up in it, and the weeds and the tree limbs are growing out, and nobody's doing anything about it, we just wasted some money, because we can't keep doing that. The people that own the property has to start doing it at some point. And yes, we're gonna try to do what we can to improve city properties, and in fact, the biggest thing that we're concerned with is try as quickly as we can to get some houses on these city-owned properties and so forth, so that the community starts to rebuild itself. By having working families coming in that can maintain them and pay for them and improve the city's tax base, so it's less of a burden on the people that are here now.
Mr. Little?
Yes.
It would be an opportunity to remind everyone about the tree program that you've got going
Yes.
on Blake.
We have a tree program in community development that if a property owner has a tree that needs to be removed, or big limbs or whatever, if they'll pay 1/3 of it, this program will pay the other 2/3 to help get some of these trees down. That's
Details are posted on the city website. I hear you. I like to swap in. I got a tree in my backyard. I let it get cut down. And I can't afford to do that. But there's a tree on the front lawn, the tree lawn. It feeds every squirrel in the neighborhood, and I help do that. I'll separate the leaves and all of that and put the nuts where they can get to them. Go by there, you see them there. So I need that tree cut down in the back because it's leaning or on the vert. I know I'm talking to the wrong people.
Not talking Mr. Little.
You may be talking to the right person. If
We'll talk.
we'll talk, and we can get a price on it and find out what it would be and see.
We have one more item, and then I'll allow more questions. We have.
I just got one little statement to make. That is another reason why we need a newsletter, to let the people know that they cannot rake leaves in the street. that the site, that the tree line belongs to them, and all of that good information. That's another reason why we need a newsletter. Thank you.
The last item on this agenda is the Michigan pre-employment drug testing. Who's covering that item? I think Commissioner Isom said that this came from,
Yes. So we're gonna take good care.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me speak. I had this, I'm Commissioner Isom, Personnel and Finance Chair, and I added this to my agenda last month, so I pushed it to the legislative committee that the Regulation 2.07 drug and alcohol testing of the Michigan, this is just for Michigan State, that says they will no longer be testing for marijuana during pre-employment drug screen for some new hires. And I'm just looking at the overall picture as this city is doing more infrastructure work and road work, that sooner or later we're gonna need, more employees, more people in public works. This is not for hiring, can't be the pre-tested, it's not employees who work in law enforcement, operating, CDLs and like that, but just in case, I know sooner or later we're gonna have to bump up public works, so we wanna give people a chance to.
so just for clarity, so you're saying,
This is,
so people who would be working in public works. that
No,
would
not
not
just-
be screened,
this is pre-drug.
no pre-drug before the application or once they get in there?
There's no drug screen at all. Right now, it's in Michigan, this is state jobs now. But I'm just saying,
So
maybe,
you're saying this is already in place?
yes, this started October of 23 for state employees.
So they're not screening heavy equipment operators?
No, law enforcement and heavy operators
Okay.
do not, they
have
test
to-
and
yeah, they
take
have
the
to
test.
apply to it.
But
Okay.
just regular, like office workers that's
Oh, okay.
been trying to get hired in, that now they can go back.
So they feel like that if you were high, you could do the job, is that what I'm just asking?
No, they're saying they're not testing for marijuana now.
Okay.
So
State
there's still a
employee,
Schedule I drug in the state of Michigan.
I'm just saying this, they passed October 23, they're not testing pre-screen of new hires for marijuana.
I can help with that.
Mhm.
And
Because I need some clarity. So I'm like,
Okay.
because marijuana is being accepted by state law in a
Right.
lot of the states, they are trying to eliminate the pre-screening as a condition of employment,
Mm-hmm.
only because marijuana can stay in your system 21 days.
Right.
It can stay in your hair longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
But while they're eliminating it for initial employment, they're not eliminating it as far as if a person on the job
Yeah, right.
begins to behavior or whatever that's improper, they'll test them, and if they are found to be impaired, they'll lose their job.
Right, random.
You won't be able to get a CDL
Right.
without having to pass the full
Mhm.
test range, including the 21 days in advance. Same thing with police officers and firefighters. But that's, and it's gonna create a gray area for a lot of people because some people are going to think that that means that they can smoke on the job and whatnot.
No,
And that's not the case.
no.
so you want us to,
No, I'm just bringing up for discussion that, we don't want to lose certain people or stop people from employment,
do we already have this policy?
No, this is state, we have the background check, they test for drugs and.
Yeah,
for
that would have,
employment.
there have to be changes
Changed,
in the employee handbook.
Yeah,
That's, I'm ignorant, I don't know, but if that is the case, there have to be changes in
Yeah.
the employee handbook
Yeah.
because that's why we have trouble, one of the reasons we have trouble getting employees because drug testing.
drug testing, so.
I didn't see-
So I just brought it up for discussion, it was,
How actually it came up, we had a applicant that did not pass the test. and he happened to be a Benton Harbor resident, and who knows about whatever his choice is, if he smoked a month ago or what. But the HR attorney would not let him be retested. He gave an opinion to staff that he should not be retested. I asked for him to give me a bona fide qualification of his opinion on that, because I already knew that the state of Michigan and other municipalities were not testing for employment. So that's why we having this discussion. And I'll ask through the chair to the city manager. That's been a couple of weeks now. Do we have a response from our HR attorney as to what his reasoning was for that opinion?
But if he's saying that it's in their handbook,
Yes.
they would have to completely change all of their employee handbooks, so it's initially in their handbook.
Mhm.
So now they have to go through and make all of those changes.
What
in
is
order
that?
For that young man, because the city's handbooks currently, as the chief just stated,
Yeah.
has all of that, so they have to make those changes to actually make those, so these
Right.
guys, and they should have actually been included on this conversation.
Well, we had that conversation with city manager before. I didn't have it with the chief, but if the state is doing it and other municipalities is doing it, and that it's the right thing to do, if you're 21 in the state of Michigan, you can smoke marijuana. You cannot drive with marijuana. You cannot operate the equipment with marijuana. You can't have a gun with. There's some things that you cannot do. But to penalize a Benton Harbor resident to want a job and that have the capacity to do the job, and we need those kind of people in Benton Harbor, then why not change the book? Everybody else has changed since it's a new day with marijuana. Sooner or later, the federal government's gonna change it too. So let's get on board and do something for the people, because this is a people issue, not anything else but a people issue.
So is it just marijuana or like all drugs?
No, this is just marijuana.
Marijuana.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is, if what's in place is contradictory to what wants, then they have to fix the contradictory stuff
Right,
that all the
right.
other employees assigned, so all of the other employees, besides probably the police and all of that, have to go back through and sign and be re-educated, so it's not, it's
Mhm.
simple, but it's still a process.
It's for
I understand
so
that.
everybody that's already there, they already get randomly tested for
But they signed a
anything.
handbook that says something else, so they all need to be, they have to go through that whole, that's what I'm saying, it's a process. I'm
Right.
not disagreeing with you,
Okay.
but you don't want us to get sued from something that we neglected to do for one of our employees, is all I'm saying.
No,
Make
we're
sure
trying
we
to
got-
do it right,
Yeah.
but the right thing is to not test pre-employment.
Pre-employment, but then so what if they start and then they still smoking weed? And then they
You-
get fired as a result because they never stopped, because they said, oh. our
No,
employment-
everybody knows the rules. You just,
So then-
now if you just blatantly come in
So-
and smoke, and you
you
come in, your eyes red, you look lethargic, yeah, you can be randomly checked.
Right,
We're
right.
not saying that, we're only talking about one test, pre-employment.
Mhm.
One test, that's all we're talking about. The rest of it is random, you can random, whatever the random is.
It's gonna take some time before they really want to make those moves, and they'll be done probably in concert with other cities and so forth,
Mhm.
because there's still a liability issue. It's a
Right.
gray area, it's
Right.
not simple cut and dry.
Right.
You can not perform the test, and 2 weeks later, even on training, somebody suddenly kills somebody, and then it turns out that they were high. We had a real problem. So it's gonna take a little time.
Yeah, the real problem is on that person that did that. It wouldn't be on us. Because if we make it a standard rule that you do not come to work drunk, high on drugs, or nothing else. That's everybody knows that, and it's in the book. So I don't see any reason why that first one, that one.
There's a principle in HR.
Well, how does the state?
Negligent hiring.
He did the research. How did the state do it? Do the state feel in jeopardy that they're hiring somebody that could see these projections of could happen? There's got to be some basics to it. You just can't say, well, next week this could happen. No, the state has already set some things in place to protect the state. But the fair thing is to not jeopardize that employee. If they need a job and they're willing to work and they're not smoking, or they smoked 30 days ago, if they're not in a job that's going to operate equipment or something like that, why not let that person get a chance? I could tell you a personal story that I might.
No, you don't need
Oh,
to do
okay.
that. You don't need to do that.
I can tell you a personal story that'll set you up.
Go ahead.
So here's my question, and I don't have a position either way. But, so Commissioner, was there a change for the state of Michigan federally? Because here's why I asked.
Okay.
No.
So, okay, well, then that's a problem. So when we, as you know, we prolifically apply for grants
Mm-hmm.
that are federally funded.
Okay.
We have in every grant, and I could be stand corrected, there is a box that says that you are a drug-free work environment.
Ooh.
So realize when we apply for grants for public safety, it's really the city of Benton Harbor
Mm-hmm.
that is applying for and accepting the grant. So when the state of Michigan first legalized marijuana, we were federally required as a police department to put out a statement that says we are still a drug-free environment and it is not permissible for officers or firefighters to smoke marijuana. We had to do that to still maintain eligibility for federal funds.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, again, I'm ignorant to this. So I'm asking, if we're saying the state of Michigan is making this change, is there a provision that says they can still get federal funds? Or are they saying their coffers are so big they don't need them? Because Benton Harbor still needs them. And if we do a grant request and we need to provide proof that we are still drug-free work environment, but we're not, we can kind of kiss grant money goodbye federally.
I would look into that, but I think it wouldn't change that. I think it'd still be a drug-free workplace.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I don't think it'll change
I'll
that.
make sure that we get a clear opinion from the attorney.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
Good question, yeah.
Continue to have this conversation, because I'm not saying if
Yeah.
it won't hurt us, there's nothing, because there's still a process in there.
Yeah.
But if what the chief is saying
Mhm.
is accurate, then we need to tread lightly and get an opinion to see, to make sure that it doesn't affect our federal funding.
I understand.
We don't want to shoot ourselves.
But
I have one quick question,
Okay.
just for process. If a person applied, they failed their drug test, couldn't they just reapply in 20 days when they're clean? Is that an option? Or
Ask the
are you
question.
saying that's not an option?
Ask the question because the HR attorney turned us down. So I asked the question, through the chair, would you ask the city manager if he has that information for us? Yes.
Madam Chair, I will have that conversation with the attorney to get a clear understanding with all of these elements included in that question.
But if somebody failed it and they reapplied and they passed and were able to keep themselves, then they should be given an opportunity. Because you hired them at
I
that
will
point.
make
because
sure
they were
that's
clean.
included in the question.
Well, that is the reason why, because he wouldn't allow that person to come back and take a second test. His opinion was, or her opinion was, to not let the person come back and take the test.
As I said earlier, there's a lot that's got to be reconciled there. What Chief said is absolutely right. All of our federal grants require a a drug-free workplace position.
Thank you.
But what he's saying is true. A person can become drug-free in 21 days, or whatever the issue was, and reapply.
Mhm.
And they should be given an opportunity, so.
Yeah,
This
just
is the
for-
last
oh.
question, then you should actually send that to another committee.
Yeah.
So let them, and let it come back.
Just for a point of clarity, is this, for state and city employees, or is this for just businesses?
State,
The state and city employees?
just state.
Oh, just state employees?
Mhm. Just state employees. Well, thank you. I just brought this for discussion. We're gonna continue to do my research and we can keep this thing rolling. Thank you so much.
Is that the ordinance in your hand?
Yeah, we have it
Oh,
all.
they have a copy of it.
Thank you so much, Chief. And
Any other
Director Little,
questions
thank you.
or comments before we dismiss?
The item I mentioned about the one property,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
property.
this property is at 729 Riverside. And right next to it is a property the city already owns, and the other properties around it are owned jointly by St. Joe and the city. They're part of the airport portion. But this one property is next to one that we own. And the county is selling it to us for $71.65. That's what's owed in taxes on it. I recommend that we accept it.
We'll send this to the full body, each one of the things that we talked about. Yes, ma'am. Persons.
Madam Chair, we had a moratorium on, not selling any property for over a year now. And I know that there's been at least 3 purchases where the city bought land from the land bank. Is it any time that we as elected officials gonna get to see what that map looks like and, how many actual properties we have? I can't just go past without giving a history lesson. But back in the day, in the 80s, the city owned 800 lots. And we wanted to get rid of them, so we sold them. A lot of them for $25 and $1. So here we are collecting these lots again. And I understand the process. But my question is there going to be a time frame that we as elected officials will get to see what that looks like after we've purchased more and more lots and we already own 400?
And is it an opportunity for a resident that lived adjacent to a property that wanted to purchase and develop it? I think we've done it 1 or 2 times, because that has to get expensive to cut as well.
What we're doing is trying to assemble properties so that we can build housing units on it. As you heard a little earlier, we were talking about single-family duplexes, fourplexes. It takes more property, and what we're trying to do is match up where we may own a lot. It's a small lot, but right next to it, the county has one. We try and get it, or it comes up on tax sale. We look at all of the locations as to where they are, which ones are adjacent to properties that we already own, which ones are desirable for trying to develop. As a matter of fact, University of Michigan, Dr. Sharon Har and Gabriel Hart are actually working with us on trying to put together a plan for how we can maximize these properties and take advantage of to try to get houses built on them. This past week, the governor was through here, and you may recall hearing that she made this big announcement about housing. The state's got the same problem that the city has. It has lost a lot of population and along with a lot of tax base. And she made the announcement that they're going to be starting to release significant amounts of funds lately. I was told today that between 9 and 13 million will go into Region 8 where we are, within just a matter of weeks to a couple of months. And we'll be able to try and take advantage of that. I was here when we had all those lots and they made those decisions. I recommended against them, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And we wound up, many of those properties that were in there then, we have right now, because they come back through this tax process 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times, because people didn't do anything with it. They were sitting on them, holding them, hoping somebody was gonna come along and offer them 5 times what they paid for it. And all of that just helped to drag the city down. We gotta get this thing going the other way.
Can we get an opportunity soon as elected officials to see what the
Yes,
city?
They all talking at the same time. I can't-
There will be, but we are trying to work on a way to be able to present and show them. And we're working on that. It'll take a little while, but we'll get it.
I have citizens that wanna buy that lot
Can they
that's
present?
unbuildable. It's not buildable.
It is, and there's no such thing as unbuildable if you can get enough space.
No, because our ordinance it says 60 feet. And most of our lots are 50, 55 or 58. But our new ordinance says 60 feet, but grandfathered in for the smaller lots. You got another history lesson, huh?
So if somebody lives adjacent to one of those properties, because there are people that live adjacent to some of those properties that may wanna purchase and may wanna do some development, is that possible?
If
As
they
long as
wanna-
can show a plan that they have.
If they can show a plan and the means to do it, we'll work with them to try and do it. Because ultimately, we don't care who does it, we just want it developed. And we'll certainly work with them.
Which would be great to have a list, because there may be somebody that's interested in building.
Sure. But you don't do it by handing property over first. You do it as a part of a plan that includes their plan, their wherewithal, and the whole thing.
But Madam Chair, I'm only talking about small parts that's connected to their homestead that's not buildable. Why couldn't they buy it? That's a question. Why shouldn't they be able to buy that if it's not buildable and they can use it on their homestead?
But who's making the determination it's not buildable?
Our ordinance says that houses have to be you have to have a certain amount of footage on a lot.
And if we buy 3 different lots that are right next to each other, we don't have a problem with being unbuildable.
There's no lots like that now.
Well, I understand that, but what about the one that's sitting right next to the homeowner that's not buildable, which would extend their lot out? What's wrong with selling them that and putting that on the, that's all I wanna say. Because I get a lot of people calling about those little lots and say, well, we used to be, I wanted to buy it and now I can't get any answer from City Hall. So I don't know what to tell them, but we got a moratorium on it and we're not selling any lot. But how long can you tell a resident that?
I guess my question, Commissioner, and Ms. Little, for a point of clarity, I get those calls too. I don't have nothing to do with that. For somebody who, to your point, is not so much about being buildable, they just simply want to expand their yard, or they got more kids or grandkids. Are we not selling those lots to those people? Because we still have like hundreds of lots. So I guess for me, because I don't know, I get those questions too. What situation are we selling them, or we're not even for that situation? Because I think that's what you're saying, or we're saying.
Well, I'm only speaking of the unbuildable lots.
No, but
I don't
if
want
it's
to take
adjacent
about
to
a full
somebody's
lot.
property and they want to expand a lot of a patio or doing something, they should be allowed to do that, especially because they've probably been taking care of the lot since they've been there. So that's the question, Mr. Little, like, yeah, that we want to answer to. Can they, if somebody was living next to an adjacent lot and they had a plan for that lot, they will bring it to you to have that lot released so that they can purchase it.
We will be bringing to you in the near future the plan for what we're trying to do and
No, I'm
you'll
not
be able
talking
to
about the
see.
plan, I understand
I
that perfectly.
understand.
But I'm saying, anybody that's living next to an adjacent lot, that they wanna expand their property out, that want to purchase that lot, cause then I'll say, then they come to the city or come to the commission and we'll release it, because I think they should have that opportunity.
But how do you control that theoretically, unless a lot is in the middle of two vacant lots, every lot is next to somebody's house. And been hearing that for years, we need this, we're gonna expand this and whatnot, and all it does is just keeps it empty. Sure, it makes a yard bigger, that doesn't do anything for your tax base, doesn't do anything for your housing need, but,
It works for the citizens.
we're going through that process, we'll look at that and come back and discuss it.
Cause I think if people, it's a case by case thing as well.
Yeah, it works for the citizens.
We have one last question, we need to get out of here. Commissioner Kennard, you had your hand up.
No,
You
what I
asked-
was asking, you had already asked, so I got my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay, perfect. I didn't want to